guys, welcome to another huge episode of Triggered. Today, we'll be back with Sean Davis over at the Federalist, who is at the tip of the spear in exposing so many of the left's lies on immigration, on weaponization, lawfare, and on everything in between. So make sure you guys are tuning in, you're liking, you're sharing, subscribing, so you never miss one of these major episodes. You guys help get it out there. Okay, we've been talking about stuff. We'll talk about the pipe bomber and the discoveries there from my interview with Cash last week. You understand that no one else is even talking about these things. So we got to be all a part of that movement to get the truth out there. You guys are part of that. Remember, if you missed the show here on Rumble, go over to Apple, go over to Spotify. If you have friends that get their podcast that way, make sure they're subscribing, liking, sharing as well. We're all part of getting the truth out there. For all of the top headlines that we cover on the show, go over to my news app, MXM News, like minute by minute, MXM, Mike, X-Ray Mike, where you can get the mainstream news without the mainstream bias. And of course, don't forget about our brave sponsors, sponsors who have the guts to support this kind of programming. And also, guys, don't forget about the Birch Gold Group, where you can diversify your savings and protect your future. The Trump administration is moving fast to right all of the left's wrongs. But with all the damage we've seen the Democrats do, it's always smart to be prepared. And that's why thousands of Americans are buying gold now from the Birch Gold Group. Here are the facts. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 30%. And Birch Gold makes it extremely easy to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. Or you can even buy some gold to store in your home safe. Just text my name, Don Jr., D-O-N-J-R, to the number 989898, and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, only useful information. It's about learning more and educating yourself. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of protecting your savings today. Again, text my name, Don Jr., D-O-N-J-R, to the number 989898. Joining me now, Federalist founder Sean Davis. Sean, great to have you on, man.
Great to be back. Thank you for having me.
Well, first I have to ask, we recently had a special election in Nashville where Republican Matt Van Epps won. But more broadly, I'm wondering what you see going on in cities like Nashville. He won the district, but this lunatic, and by the way, we should play some of these clips. This lunatic woman was running who basically said, everyone in Nashville is racist. I'm like, well, why are they voting for it? And then, of course, you see the map of the congressional district, and it goes outside of Nashville. That was all red, but Nashville, the city itself, was still blue. They still voted for this person who seems to hate everyone, thinks that women who get married and have children are simply supporting the patriarchy. Basically a reverse racist. What were your major takeaways from that race, since you're in Tennessee and you're based there?
Yeah, it really was a strange race. It's an off-year election, and it was a special election. So it caught a lot of people by surprise. I think they're like, oh, crap, we got to vote. I didn't even know there was something going on. But Afton Bain is such a weird creature. She's not from Nashville, even though she's a state legislator from Nashville. She clearly hates the state, hate the people who make up the state.
I think she hates everyone. I'm not sure who she likes. I'm like, what's your purpose being here?
But really, she's the id of the modern Democrat Party. So even though she's from Nashville, a very blue city in a very blue county, there's this weird breed of Democrat that just kind of hates everything and everyone, doesn't like Trump, doesn't like Jesus, doesn't like Christians, doesn't like guns, doesn't like farms, doesn't like rural people. And even though these people are in Tennessee and in Nashville, they kind of hate what their state represents because they think it represents people who love God and love America and love the Constitution. And these people are Soviets. They're communists. They can't stand that. So to me, that kind of explains this urban hatred of the Republican Party and conservatives, even from people who live in those states and in those cities.
Yeah, it's curious because cities, even in these red states, Tennessee's pretty damn red. The cities still skew so blue. Even on the issues of illegal immigration, where they're probably, frankly, far more negatively affected. J.D. Vance recently wrote, the connection between illegal immigration and skyrocketing housing costs is as clear as day. And he's right. And yet we'll see a big city, Democrats scream about housing costs, but at the same time, they're still all in on open borders. How do we reconcile that? Because it's literally the cause of the thing they're bitching most about.
Yeah, I think there's this weird cognitive dissonance that you just have to operate with on a daily basis as a left winger or as a Democrat, where you just don't allow those different thoughts to take place in your head at the same time, because I think it would make their heads explode. But you look at Memphis, you look at Nashville, the two biggest cities in Tennessee. They're also the craziest blue cities. They're in, I believe they're the only two counties. I think Shelby County and Davidson County are the only blue counties in the entire state. And that includes like Chattanooga and Knoxville as well. So I think to be a Democrat, you have to understand, yeah, these are all our problems, but you're not allowed to entertain the thought at the same time that any of the constituent members of your party are the cause of those problems. You can't admit that, oh, maybe we have kind of a housing shortage and high prices because we have all these people who, a lot of whom are here illegally. But wait, that's the base of our party, so we're not allowed to think that. So we're just going to blame this on something else. Oh, we don't like all this crime that's happening in our blue cities, much of it coming from illegal immigration. Oh, well, crap, we're not allowed to say we should get rid of the illegals because they're a part of the coalition and we'll get run out. So we're just going to pretend that doesn't exist. So it's this odd, I think, thing that Democrats have to do every day, which is just go through life refusing to acknowledge the connection between A and B of things they see, because I think their brains would explode if they ever had to acknowledge both of those happening at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, just look at this Somali fraud ring in Minnesota. I mean, billions of dollars meant to help the people of Minnesota siphoned off to Somalia, and not just like in terms of remittances, but literally funneled to al-Shabaab, like a terror group. That's directly tied to reckless immigration policy. This is a measurable cost. It's affecting those it's designed to help negatively rather than helping even remotely. I mean, we're making big progress on immigration, but it's incredible, the fraud that we're uncovering, and that it seems like, the governor was aware. There were whistleblowers pointing it out. Not only were they not listened to, they were retaliated against, it seems. How is that even possible at this point? Is that demographic so big there that you would literally go against your own administration? Like, this isn't Republican, versus Democrat. These are Democrats in a Democrat administration saying, hey, man, there's billions that are meant to to help your constituency being funneled not just to Somalia, but to al-Shabaab rather than helping people who actually could use the assistance.
Yeah, and there's this really kind of cruel irony with the Somali population in the U.S. So the whole reason they are here is because of the civil war that was going on there in the early 90s. So the American military dispatched their forces over there. They sent Delta, they sent the Rangers. I think they sent the 10th Mountain Division over to go and protect the people from being murdered by all these warlords who were stealing food and then selling it and then using the money to buy arms. So the whole reason we were there was to protect these people who were in large part starving because warlords were stealing their money. The whole Black Hawk Down thing.
Yeah, that was Black Hawk Down. I mean, that was a big thing.
Yeah, Clinton loses his nerve. He's not able to stick with the mission. He pulls them all out. And then for some reason, I guess America has this weird collective guilt consciousness. We decide to bring them all here. And what do they do when they're here? They immediately start building crime rings where they're stealing food stamp money and sending it to terrorists.
Yeah. Like who would have thought, Sean, that allowing criminals into your country that they wouldn't reform? I mean, you give them every opportunity. Guess what? They're still going to be criminals. That doesn't mean there's not some good people in there, but when you talk about billions stolen, fraud rings, liberal judges not wanting to even penalize these people, no accountability, no restitution, no nothing. This is not a recipe for success.
No, and what makes it so maddening is how predictable it is. When you import the third world, you import all of the various tribal wars, the clan rivalries, the graft that you have there, all the problems that were endemic to the country they left. If you bring them in whole cloth without any sort of assimilation, you are bringing in all the problems that they were creating in the place that they had to flee in the first place. And it's especially sad in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. I have some really, really good friends who were born and raised there. Really good friend who built up a marvelously successful business in Minneapolis, but had to leave because of the insanity of the left-wing government in Minnesota and the takeover of Minneapolis by the Somalis. People there call it Little Mogadishu. Okay, that's not hyperbole. Everyone there calls it. It's a huge problem. It's transforming the nature of the entire city and state. That's what mass immigration does.
Yeah, so do you think that was intentional that they chose a place like Minnesota? Because you're right. I mean, some of the most incredible people I know are from there. They're so nice, almost to a fault. Do you think that was a state that was chosen because some of that, Midwestern, oh shucks, okay, we'll put up with it, and like they put up with it, to their peril for so long that now it's so entrenched they can't do anything about it, and they're still probably unwilling to speak out about it. I mean, you do that in some places. This is ridiculous. They'd say it right off the bat. Do you think that population got so entrenched there because of just the general niceties of people in Minnesota?
Well, this seems to happen a lot. We saw Biden do it with where he was bringing in plane loads of people and he wasn't dropping them in Martha's Vineyard or in Manhattan. No, he was dropping them in the rural Midwest, in the rural South. And so I think a lot of it probably it was done on purpose because you have this weird NGO immigration industrial complex where I think a lot of it probably starts out with good intentions. Oh, these people are hurting. We have the capacity to help them. We should help them. And then once this complex gets started, it becomes a money thing and a political power thing. So you get these NGOs who are getting all kinds of state and federal grants to resettle people. You have the people in charge of those programs and the government grants who are almost certainly left-wingers. And then they start looking at the chessboard and they think, oh, Minnesota, that's potentially kind of a red state or a state that could become that way. We should probably put a stop to that. And then wow, what a shocker. You have the entire Somali population in America end up in one city in the U.S. And it's hard to look at that and think, oh, I'm sure that just happened by random chance.
Yeah, and I mean, you take that, that didn't happen by chance, but it's also incredible to see Democrats right now literally running cover for narco-terrorists. I mean, if it was, an Obama drone attacking Yemen, they're fine with it. A Reaper drone, killed, 10 people, nothing. No accountability, no nothing. No one even gets in trouble. It's out of the news cycle in minutes. When I guess that was Biden even, but like Obama was droning the hell out of people. Biden after they didn't figure out that the attack was happening on, Bagram Air Force Base, but within 10 minutes, they were definitely able to find the culprits and they drone, a family of 10 or two families of 10 and, nothing happens. But they're so outraged at us taking on cartels, literally in our own hemisphere, literally running drug boats. I haven't spent a lot of time in Venezuela, but those boats look like something more out of Miami Vice than anything you see, especially in a fishing boat in Venezuela. They're not running go-fast boats with quad Mercury 450s on there in Venezuela. And that doesn't happen. I do a lot of fishing. Occasionally we use some chum. Not in an entire boat of blue barrels. Like, there's no room to actually do the fishing. But the Democrats are going all in to pretend that these are actually fishermen and not drug dealers. I mean, is there something going on in South America that they don't want us to know?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I grew up in the desert and landlocked state, so I don't have a lot of experience with deep sea fishing, but I'm pretty sure that most fishing boats have fishing equipment on them.
Yeah, you don't need to know that. It's like you don't need to be a virologist to understand that, of course, the Wuhan virus left from the lab in Wuhan, China, that studies the exact virus at ground zero of where you don't have to be a virologist. I mean, I know I got canceled because I wasn't a virologist, and I said that, even though it was obviously true and the most plausible response. But yeah, to your point, you don't need to be a great fisherman to understand that, I don't know, if you're fishing, maybe you have some nets, maybe you have rods, maybe you have spools of long line equipment. Like, I know a lot about fishing. I do a lot of it. And that ain't a fishing boat, boys and girls. That's just not.
Yeah, just show me one fish on the whole damn boat.
Yeah.
Like there's not one. They're actually like super clean, pretty sleek. But it's interesting having lived through the Obama administration, President Droney McDronerson, in the White House for 8 years there. That guy was droning American citizens. Now, they were American citizens who had gone off the reservation and were genuine terrorists, but they were American citizens nonetheless. The dude droned like 4 of them. And I don't recall the Washington Post or the New York Times or the Democrat Senate conference being, oh, my stars and garters, we can't have this. This is terrible. They whistled right past the graveyard like it never happened.
Yeah, there was no talk of due process. And again, Americans are entitled to due process. Whether we like them or not, whether they turn or not, whether they're bad people or not. Like, Venezuelan narco-terrorists are not afforded those same privileges as far as my understanding of the Constitution, which I think is pretty basic.
Yeah, and I kept hearing this term from the left. These were shipwrecked sailors that were attacked. Oh, really? Under what flag were they sailing? Because there's pretty basic rules on what you have to do in the open sea. You don't just get to go out there on a big old boat, however you feel like it, with no identification, no flag. What nation's uniform were these guys wearing? Because I'm pretty sure they were under no flag and they were having no uniform. So either they were terrorists or they were pirates. And the law on what you're allowed to do to terrorists and pirates in the sea is pretty clear. But again, these guys
maritime law is actually a lot tougher than even American law, from that perspective. And it's very clear. If they're running, especially 70 miles an hour in the open ocean with no flag, with barrels of stuff from a known narco-terrorist state, I mean, this is not rocket science. Like, this does not leave a lot of room for, anything other than the obvious.
Right. And so my grandfather, he passed away, 12 years ago. 13 years ago. He was a fire controlman in a submarine during World War II in the South China Sea, which means he was guy in charge of putting together the firing solutions for the torpedoes. And I heard some stories from him, and I've read the lore of what his boat did at the time. They sunk a crap ton of Japanese hardware in the middle of the ocean. I don't ever remember him telling me, we were only allowed to shoot one torpedo. Once it was out of the tube, we were only allowed to shoot lawyers at him. No, you shot until the thing was sunk.
How about another for good measure? We need more. We need more of that generation's mentality, I think, because, man, the Democrats seem to be literally like, a civilizational threat in terms of common sense or just about anything else. I mean, it's wild.
Yeah, it's maddening. And the stuff they're willing to make up is just another one of their gay little ops that they use all the time. As soon as one is revealed to be a total nonsensical hoax, they don't apologize or rationalize. They immediately move on to the next one. Like, it's actually, it's almost impressive if you have no soul and no sense of morality,
which they don't,
how they're able to do it. But like, they just move, they're like goldfish. There's just no memory of what happened 5 seconds ago. They're immediately on to the next hoax. And like, quite frankly, I'm tired of it. And it has to stop.
No, listen, I mean, they're literally going as far as to push sedition from active military people and people in Congress to save drug boats. I mean, it really does make you wonder what's going on. I mean, how have you guys been covering this over at the Federalist? Because it seems like such an obvious one. It's such a no-brainer. And yet, man, if you turn on the media, it's like, this is their like hill to die on. This is like one of the top political. We got to save drug smugglers. Like, I don't know. If the Somalis aren't going to assimilate, the drug smuggler from Venezuela, you think they're going to assimilate and start leading a good life and be productive in society? Like, I doubt it. I think it'd be a long shot.
Yeah, it's interesting kind of how we have changed our coverage at the Federalist of a lot of these hoaxes. When they first started doing this crap in 2015 and 2016, we would dig into the details and we would start refuting every little thing. And it was like playing whack-a-mole, because as soon as you refuted one thing, which wasn't that hard, they had 10 new lies out there you had to smack. And what we learned over time, and I think the revelation of the Russia hoax being a total con job made a big difference. Yeah. Is that the games just don't work as well anymore. And so we've kind of transitioned from having to go and smack down every stupid lie to really just outright mockery, because what their goal is anymore, they're not conning everyone. They're hoping they can get 1 or 2 or 3 stupid Republicans in Washington to play along with their dumb little
But they always
games.
do. That's the problem with our movement.
We
They always do. Thomas Mason, we got to really protect the drug boats. I'm like, do you think your constituency in Kentucky really thinks that? Like, but it doesn't matter. Like, they get a cush treatment from the media. They can kind of, you can be 90% conservative in Washington, D.C., and it's pretty light. But if you give in on the big ones, if you follow their lead, you just prostrate yourself to them, like on occasion, hey, you can go about the rest of your business in peace and harmony.
Yeah, so I think it's become more important, at least from my perspective, to kind of bully and mock the Republicans who are stupid enough to get caught up in these things, because it really is embarrassing. At this point, if you're a Republican, it's an IQ test. And I'd say 98% of the people in Washington on the right are not falling for it, but you still got some dummies out there. And I'm reminded of a quote at the beginning of C.S. Lewis's book, The Screw Tape Letters. And it says at the beginning, it's a quote from St. Thomas More, a Catholic martyr. And it says, "The devil, that proud spirit, cannot endure to be mocked." Mockery is a totally underrated tool in politics. If you can get people to laugh at someone, to mock them and enjoy mockery of them, then you own the perspective of that person for a very, very long time. And this is something the left understood. It's why they had The Daily Show. Yeah. It's why they have Colbert. It's why they took over late night comedy. Unfortunately for them, they're not very good at it anymore.
No, it's only effective if you're actually funny in the mockery. Otherwise, it just sounds kind of trite and bitter.
Right. So it's something that I think the right has finally discovered, that one, mockery works. Number two, it's fun. And then number three, these people are eminently worthy of being mocked. Like Mark Kelly, the guy leading the Seditious Six, who was a CCP, a communist Chinese business partner with one of his like drone or space companies for years. That guy's the one out there being Captain America. Are you kidding me? That's absurd. So we mock them for that.
Yeah, that guy couldn't be Captain Crunch, in my opinion, based on every position that he's ever taken. I mean, it's nuts, and yet they give him the platform. That's why for you guys at the Federalist, for what I try to do, it's just so important for people to tune out that mainstream media that still turns that guy into a hero. I mean, he literally bragged about bringing like a Chinese Communist Party flag into space as an astronaut. I'm like, that's who we're putting. This does not seem like we're elevating our best. It seems like we're elevating the clowns that fit that narrative and will just succumb. And I guess I have a feeling Pete Hegseth and the rest of the crew over at the DOW are probably weeding out those people and actually putting real patriotic Americans who deserve to be there, not like the woke DEI checkbox candidates into space anymore.
Well, yeah, and it's so interesting looking at what's happened to the Democrat Party, because I think the last guy that they had, who I think is like a true American hero, red-blooded, middle America, hadn't lost his mind, was Jim Webb. So this guy was a decorated Vietnam vet. He was an author. He never totally lost his mind. And they ran that guy out of the party. Normally, that's the guy you're going to use on this kind of operation, someone who's respected, who has that history, who isn't a Looney Tunes. They don't have those people in their party anymore. So they have to go to people like Mark Kelly, a CCP stooge, to go do their dirty work. And so it's a little funny that they're now in this mess, that they're having to pick chuckleheads like that to run these ops, because they just don't have good people to do it anymore. Like, who else do they have? Alyssa Slotkin, frickin' CIA stooge. They can't really use her, so they have to go to Mark Kelly.
Well, but they also driven out reasonable people. I mean, I don't agree with them on everything, but Joe Manchin was a reasonable guy. He's like, I can't be here anymore. These people are fucking crazy. I got to get the hell out of here. You see what they're trying to do, to John Fetterman, who's really pretty damn left. But on a few issues, he's like, this is nuts. This is not what my people want. It's now they're going to primary him. I'm like, he's one of the only people that is even willing to stand up to any other. I don't agree with him probably on much on some of these issues, but he was able and willing to take a couple stances that didn't just go with the narrative on 2 or 3 issues. He's far more popular than most of them, especially in his own district. And they're like, primary, we got to get that guy out of there. He doesn't want to see whatever the hell, common sense things his actual constituency agrees with. They're a rudderless ship.
Oh, Fetterman, he's a fascinating test case. And it says everything about the modern Democrat Party, that the guy with significant brain damage is the only one making sense half the time. How do you get to that point in your party that Fetterman is the guy who people look to as he's the sane one. He's the one who actually understands some of this stuff. And like you said, I don't agree with him on most stuff, but he actually fits his state shockingly well.
He knows his people and is willing to represent them. The problem with everyone else on the Democrat side is, they know what George Soros thinks and they're willing to represent him, not the people that put them in office. You look at these middle America, blue state senators, and you're like, who are you representing? I know people from those areas. I know Democrats from those areas. They don't agree with that. They may agree on some of the issues or social issues or maybe abortion, whatever it is, but like on this, like that's your hill to die on. And it seems like they have no representation because, without that Soros money or the New York and California money, the radical side, like you can't actually get elected. Like you'll never win. So they end up electing people who are far more radical than the people they're chosen to represent. And you end up with this mess.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to watch how the Soros family plays this stuff. Every time Alex Soros has a meeting with one of these people in his fancy New York loft, he takes a picture with him and immediately posts it. And it's almost like a hunter collecting and displaying the game that he's killed and stuffed and put on the wall. Yeah. That's what Soros is doing with politicians. And it's a demonstration of power that he's doing, showing I own these people, that they work for me. And man, can you think of a single major Democrat Party power figure today who hasn't had to make the pilgrimage to the Soros loft to take that picture for him to post up there as one of his collected little pets?
I cannot. It doesn't exist. I'm sure they're out there, but they'd never get elected to office because if they don't make that pilgrimage, they don't get the money and then they can't win. So, Sean, maybe shifting to the economy for a second, where do you think we are as a movement in communicating, on this message like affordability? We're building something for the long term instead of just the sugar highs. And again, it's sort of hard to. And I try to, as a business guy, as a guy with an economics degree, like trying to explain that it hasn't happened. Like, man, you can't just undo 4 years of stuff. Like inflation numbers are under control, but like the price of goods is still high because you had 4 years of inflation in like double-digit numbers. Like, well, unless you run negative inflation, which is really hard to get to, that baseline is there, but that baseline's not there because of Trump. That baseline is there because of Biden. I'm curious how you talk about that to an audience because, again, they go in there, they still feel, well, things are too expensive. It's like, well, they're not rising as much as they are anymore, but over 4 years, that base price for that product jumped. And you just can't undo 4 years of literally gross incompetence and gross negligence, in a year, let alone even a few years. I mean, some of those things, they got to work on and we got to try to fix for it. But like, you think we're going to really run, negative 12% inflation for years to get those things back down to that price? I mean, some of the things, gas and stuff, they can do that, but products across the board, that's not that easy.
Yeah, so I think the big problem here, and that prices and affordability are just a proxy for, is people feel as though they've lost the country that they had once. You used to be able to raise a family in a nice neighborhood in a home you owned on one income. Your kids could afford to go to college if they wanted to. When they got out of college, they didn't have $1 zillion in debt, and they were able to find a good job with a company for the long term that took care of them and provided for them even in retirement. And so people look around, they're like, man, we don't have that country anymore. I can't afford a house. I've got $1 zillion in college debt. I've been out of college for a year, by the way. I can't find a job. There's no chance I'll ever be able to afford a home, number one, because I don't have the income to support a mortgage, and I can't actually build up the capital I need to do a down payment without a job. I'll be lucky if I can ever get married and have kids. So I think it's really, really important to understand that that's kind of the universe where this affordability argument is happening in. And it's the same thing for immigration. Yeah. It's not just that people sit around thinking, oh, I hate immigrants, they're the worst. It's that they see how the country has changed and how its nature has changed, and they see how much stuff costs, and they can't get a job. And they think, well, you know what? Maybe it would be easier for me if we didn't have 10 or 20 million illegals here. Maybe it would be easier if we weren't importing people and paying them half of what Americans normally get paid. And so I think what people are looking for is not a solution right now, that milk has to be cheaper right now. They need to know that people understand that this is something that's been happening over 30 years, 50 years, the American middle class, the core of the American dream being sold out. And they want someone to come in and acknowledge that and then put together a plan to fix that. So I think that's what the Republican Party should be about going forward, is restoring the American dream that was stolen from them for 50 years by a globalist uniparty who cared more about making money for their banker friends than they did about taking care of their own country.
Yeah, but I also see it again in the Democrats are trying to latch onto the affordability issue. I'm like, wait, like, so if you elect Democrats in midterms, like, do you think things are going to get more affordable or less? Do you think they're going to open the borders, or do you think they're going to keep them closed? Do you think they're going to keep giving, grants to every, every refugee from all over the world, whether they need to be here or not, whether they can add any value into the system or not. Like, do you think things get better or worse if you bring Democrats back in there? Because I don't think they get better. Like, they certainly don't. So, this notion of like, well, we need a switch. I'm like, I don't know, guys. That sort of seems like we go back to the Biden policy, because we know Joe Biden wasn't making that policy. That was Democrat Party decision makers, whether that's Barack Obama, whether that's Susan Rice. That's what they want to do, and that's what they're looking forward to going back to. And that's what gave us the 4 years of hell that sort of set that benchmark where prices are now here, and it's hard to get them back down, even if you stop the future growth with low inflation right now.
Yep, that's exactly right. I'm reminded of Biden, I think when he was vice president, responding to job losses in the coal community, saying, well, you can learn to code. Like that's what the Democrat Party gets you, is that when they come in and deliberately destroy your job, they mock you and then tell you to go get a job in an industry, by the way, that they've sold out to India and China, because they know they can import workers there for 50 cents on the dollar. And who cares what happens to the American workers? They're the ones who jacked up inflation. They're the ones who've made cars expensive. They're the ones who've outsourced and offshored all our jobs in our industry. They're the ones who are sending people overseas to fight in stupid wars that don't need to be fought, and churning up trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. So yeah, I think it's super important to remind people of the alternative, because politics really is a competition between alternative visions. We don't really need to hear what the Democrat Party vision is, because we lived it, we saw it, and it's an absolute disaster for the country.
Yeah, by the way, I would, now that he's retired, maybe needs some employment, I would pay good money to see Joe Biden learn to code. Like, I think that would be a reality TV show that would make The Apprentice seem like, low ratings. I would pay a lot to see that happen. I think we should try to make that happen.
Hell, I'd pay money to see him learn to talk and learn to walk after watching him for the last 4 years.
Sean, you make a solid point. That's what you geniuses over at the Federalist. That's why you make the big bucks. Because yeah, you're right. Like, I'd like to see him function. Like, that would be impressive. But learning to code would definitely be funny. So, Sean, as we look to sort of the end of the year, what stories do you expect to dominate the headlines? How do you approach your coverage at the Federalist when compared to, say, the regime media outlets out there?
Well, yeah, I think we look at what they do and then we try to do the opposite. So they just go out there and lie and make crap up. And we're like, you know what? Maybe we don't do that. Maybe we tell the truth, and then we just have facts out there. But the reality is the corrupt corporate media has so much power that it's hard to not be reactive. Yeah. So it's always a struggle figuring out how much of our resources are we going to expend reacting to their nonsense, and then how much are we going to expend trying to be proactive and telling the stories that we think need to be told. And it's a constant balancing act. Obviously, I think immigration is a big story. And then I think the continuing judicial coup against the country, those two things, how those shake out, I think determines whether we have a country in 5 or 10 years. Because if we allow a bunch of corrupt judges who don't care about their oaths and don't care about the law to do whatever they want, irrespective of who we have elected to do things that elected people are allowed to do, and if we don't get rid of this criminal class of illegals, we're not going to have a country anymore. It's going to be inalterably changed. So I think immigration and the judicial coup are the two main things that will determine what we look like as a country in 1, 2, or 10 years.
In your mind, what's the roadmap to deal with the corrupt judges? What power does Congress have to do that? Will they actually do that? Are the margins too tight that you lose, the 1 or 2 Republicans that, feel like I guess it's their duty to always go against Republicans? Can you actually make that happen in the real world, and especially, with such a slim majority?
I think you can. I think it takes real courage and leadership. It's not an easy thing to do. You're going to have everyone in the media hate you, but whatever, you get used to that after a couple minutes. I think it's important to put these judges through the ringer. And you'll have some people say, well, there's not the votes in the Senate to convict them, so it's a waste of time. Now I'd say, it is not a waste of time. You think corrupt Judge Jed Boasberg wants to see all of the communications he was having outside of the courtroom? You think he wants us to go through and understand who he was talking to and what he was planning while he was gagging telecom companies from talking about how they were being forced to illegally spy on Congress? You think that guy wants to talk about how he tried to usurp the powers of the commander in chief to take control of military aircraft? None of these judges want to be put through that ringer. They don't want their papers subpoenaed. They don't want to have to testify. They don't want their phone records and their emails and their texts out there. That absolutely terrifies them. So I say, by all means, terrify them, make an example of them, that we're not going to put up with this crap. Because in this instance, the process is actually a major part of the punishment. That's what the left does. They don't care what the end goal is. They'll destroy you if they can. But if they can bankrupt you and embarrass you and ruin your life through the process of dragging you through the courts, they'll do it. So why on earth does the right not understand that they need to do that to the left?
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me, on Thursday we saw, Kash Patel and the FBI seemed to arrest a suspect in the January 6th pipe bombing, which to me sounded like a much bigger deal than anything else that happened on January 6th. When you talk about someone laying bombs within the vicinity of the RNC and the DNC, both of the two major parties of this country, and it was like that South Park episode, and it's gone. January 6th happened. It was almost like that was the alternate if they didn't get what they wanted out of January 6th, which to me is entirely created. And I think we all know that now, at least anyone with a brain. But you saw that, Kash Patel's FBI, they now have a suspect in custody. How did that not happen in 4 years under the prior regime? I mean, it sort of feels like the same level of corruption. They were much closer to it. They were, it should have been a big story. It was never even a story, let alone a big story. It was swept under the rug. And these guys in 8 months or so are able to get to a suspect that the other side didn't do in 4 years or didn't even attempt to do. I mean, I'd ask, how do you deal with what seems like either corruption or incompetence, perhaps both? Is there ever any accountability for that in, our major federal law enforcement division?
Yeah, I would love to know the full story of why it took 4 years. You said it took them 8 months.
Well, it didn't take 4 years. It took them 4 years to get nothing. And then, once you had a change of leadership, all of a sudden it took them 8 months to actually figure it out. How is that possible?
I suspect it didn't even take them 8 months. I think it probably, once they got the bad personnel out of the way, who had been very deliberately obstructing and confusing the issue to prevent a definitive identification. Because let's be honest, that what they don't want is for the pipe bomber to be anyone other than their stereotypical red MAGA hat wearing redneck.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, if it was real, that guy would have been found in 5 minutes.
Well, they found Nemos in 5 minutes.
That guy would have gotten the chair by now. That guy was, minutes. And I imagine they may have even come to, they may have even figured this out. And then because it wasn't that guy, it just went away. Who knows? I don't know anything about the guy, but I was supposed to have Kash on the show on Thursday. We were going to talk about everything else going on. I was like, oh, wow, that sort of, I guess that changed the script a little bit. So we had something different to talk about, but it is sort of amazing that in 4 years, nothing happened. And then, and you're right, it was maybe 8 months since they took power, but by the time they weeded out all this stuff, I'm sure it was a lot less time. And because of the lawfare we were talking about from the judges, I mean, I imagine they have to dot every I, cross every T, because they're not going to get any benefit of the doubt in prosecuting this in any way, shape, or form, which is the exact opposite of anyone who was attacked by the Justice Department on January 6th, where they got every benefit of the doubt. No one got any due process. No one gave a crap. And these people, for nonviolent offenses, got to rot in jail for 4 years.
Yeah, so I read through the whole affidavit, the arrest affidavit of the pipe bomber, and what was really interesting was, the FBI is very good at investigating. They're really, really good at it. Where problems develop is when they target the wrong things or the wrong people, and they use that amazing ability and power to destroy their enemies. In this case, when you see the evidence, I don't think these were new facts they learned a week ago or 2 weeks ago.
No, Kash said it on the show. He's like, honestly, we weren't able to uncover anything new, but we just actually did the work with what was existing evidence. It wasn't like it was any new evidence. It was that. I asked about some of the things because, again, you see the video footage. It's like frame by frame it's like 1970s videography. Probably not what's actually out there on the cameras at the DNC or the RNC. So, again, it also created a whole bunch of conspiracy theories, which, again, forces people to go down a different path. But, again, I think the FBI under Wray and Biden, they were too busy chasing down a grandmother that may have taken a selfie inside the velvet ropes 2 hours after they broke through, not even knowing they weren't supposed to be in the Capitol building. They found those people really quickly. It's almost like they were trying to find those people and not the other guy that wanted to blow up both parties, in our republic.
Yeah, the metaphor I would use. So my family, when our kids were younger, we loved doing puzzles.
Yeah.
And when you got little kids, you always want to let your kids put the last puzzle pieces in to get that satisfaction. And I imagine what this case looked like was a puzzle.
See, Sean, you and I are so different than that. I'm going to finish the puzzle in the Trump family. Okay, you better be on it early. We're not going to let them get those little wins. It's just different. But I understand your point. Maybe I gotta think about that for the future if I'm giving parenting advice.
That's hilarious. But I imagine a puzzle that had 10 key pieces missing that you couldn't quite make out the main picture, and that those pieces were just left on the side and nobody put them where they needed to go because they knew what it was going to look like at the end. And it took Cash and Dan Bongino coming in and saying, hey, all you idiots, get away from the puzzle. We're putting those puzzle pieces in there. Ta-da, look at that. We have our suspect. Yeah. I think that's what happened over 4 years. And it took them weeding out all these corrupt agents in the deep state to prevent their obstruction and confusion of the issue, to prevent their narrative from being blown up entirely.
Yeah, no, I agree. I know we're going to see a bunch from a lot of left-leaning judges trying to throw this out and make sure this guy is turned into a hero, rather than face accountability for his actions if he did it. So we don't even have to do a show on that because we all know what's going to happen. But Sean Davis, thank you so much. Everyone, go check out Sean on social media. Go check out the Federalist. These are guys doing incredible work. It's really important. Sean, as always, thanks for being here. And again, I apologize. I was a little bit late. I'm sorry. I had to do some daddy-daughter stuff that she was running late and totally not respectful of my time. But, this is life as a dad.
Hey, you made the right choice. The kids are always more important. So thank you for having me on.
Appreciate it, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Take care, man.
Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Remember to like, to share, to subscribe. We need you to get it out there. The like button, it's right there. Just hit it. Just hit it right now. Hit it right now. Get it out there. Share this with your friends. If you have a political text thread, whatever it is, send it to them. Get their opinions going. Let's get that conversation started and make sure we break through the mainstream media noise. Check out our incredible sponsors down below and in the video's description. It ain't easy to support this kind of programming, but you got to support those who share your values. So, guys, thanks so much. I look forward to seeing you soon, and we'll talk all again later in the week.